In this lesson, we're going to deal with rounding with decimal numbers. This is section 3.1 of the textbook. Rounding with decimals is very similar to rounding with whole numbers. The only difference is in the final step. So let's take a look at how this works. We're first asked to round to the tenths place in this first question right here. Well, just like rounding with whole numbers, the first step is to identify the place value you're rounding to. The place value table for decimals is reproduced below here, and this is also in the textbook in the beginning of section 3.1. To identify decimal place values, you always start at the decimal point, and then you count out. My tenths place, where I'm asked to round to, is the first digit to the right of that decimal point. So here it is, my tenths place. Since it's one digit to the right, I'm going to go to my problem and look one digit to the right of the decimal point. And here it is, the 3. So I've identified my tenths place. As I mentioned in the notes here, I like to actually underline it. That helps a lot later on when you're having to look back and forth between two different digits. My next step, I'm going to look one place to the right. One place to the right of the 3 is an 8. My categories say if it's 5 or more, I have to round the underlined number up, and if it's 4 or less, I have to keep that underlined number the same. Well, 8's bigger than 5, so I'll go with that first option, and I'm going to round the underlined number up. This is actually the step where a lot of people make mistakes. It's always the underlined number that you're changing. You're either rounding it up or keeping it the same. And that's the other reason I like to underline it. So I'm going to take that 3 and round it up to a 4. Alright, let's take a look at the next step. I'm going to drop all digits after the underlined number. So all digits before the 12 and the decimal point are going to come straight down, but everything after that tenths place gets removed from the question completely. So your final answer is just 12.4. This is the big difference from rounding with whole numbers. Rounding with whole numbers, you would change those final digits to 0. But since those zeros are no longer needed as placeholders, we drop them completely. Your final answer should end in the place value that you're asked to round to. That means the last digit of your answer should be the place value that you were asked to round to, and it is. It's in the tenths place. Let's take a look at this next one. Round to the thousandths place. So I'm going to take a look at my place value table, and I'm going to find the thousandths place. Well, it goes tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So the thousandths place is this third digit after the decimal point, to the right of the decimal. So looking at my question, I'm going to underline the third digit to the right of the decimal. And here it is. It's the 6. Again, I have to look one place to the right to decide what to do with that 6. The 6 doesn't tell me whether to round up or not. It's the digit to the right. To the right of the 6 is a 2. Well, that's firmly in the 4 or less group, so that means I'm going to keep that 6 the same. It's the underlined number that I'm making a decision about. So the 6 remains a 6. Everything to the left of the 6, the 2, the decimal point, the 8, and the 3, are all going to come down. But the digits after the 6 get dropped, which means I don't write them. The final answer would be 2.836. Last but not least, let's look at this final question, round to the hundredths place. Well, we've done tenths and thousandths, so let's do hundredths. As you can see from the table, it's going to be the second digit to the right of the decimal point. So here it is. It's a 9. I have to look to the right to decide, am I going to round that 9 up, or am I going to keep it the same? Well, to the right of the 9 is a 6, which means 5 or more. I'm going to round the 9 up. Now we have a problem, because I can't round the 9 up to a 10 and fit both digits into one place value. There's a couple ways you can think about this. 9 can't go up to a 10 in one spot, but I can make that 39 go up to a 40. That's one way to think about it. Or you can think I can make the 9 go up to a 10 if I carry the 1 to the next place value. 3 plus 1 would give me a 4. So I have a 4, 0, and now I bring down everything to the left of that, and I don't write any digits after the hundredths place. 6.40 would be my final answer. This is a situation where you do have the 0 in your final answer at the end because it's in the hundredths place. Again, as a final check, always make sure that the last digit of your answer is the place value you were asked to round to. the hundredths place, and in this case it is. To review, when rounding with decimals, you're going to follow the same three-step process as you would for rounding with whole numbers, with one small exception at the end. First, identify the place value you're rounding to. You can use the table in the textbook, but it's good to start learning these place values. Next, look one digit to the right to decide if you're rounding up or keeping the same. Always make sure that you're changing the underlined number. And then lastly, instead of writing zeros at the end, drop all the digits after the place value you rounded to. Your final answer should end in the place value you were asked to round to.